The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the Accent Radio Network or the staff, management, and sponsors of this radio station.
Mr. and Mrs. America, and to all our ships at sea. Hi, everyone. I'm Jerry Hughes, and welcome. Welcome to Straight Talk from the Accent Radio Network. And across our grand old republic, we welcome you, and we thank you very, very much for the great honor, for the privilege, and the pleasure in sharing this time with you, and I do hope you're doing well. And this is the Second Amendment hour of Straight Talk, which is heard in the middle hour of our broadcast each Wednesday here on the Accent Radio Network. Co-host for our program is Marco Caporale of Family Firearms, now in your new location in Valrico, Florida. Marco, welcome aboard, sir.
How are you doing, Jerry?
Doing well, sir. Hope you are today.
Yes, we are. We definitely are.
Fantastic. I want to ask our listeners to be sure to have paper and pen handy. Marco, I know you have some information about a family in need of assistance in your area, apparently a family that lost their home recently due to fire, and you have a special offer for folks who are willing to help those folks out. We want to get into that in just a few minutes and let our listeners know in the Central Florida area how they can help. What I'd like to do today is just deal with some basics, at least start out with that. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconception and maybe even myth in the area of the Second Amendment and firearms. Who can own a gun, who can't, what kind of firearms are available, can lawfully be owned, and so on. And maybe we can start building on that and then perhaps branch out from there, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Let's start with this. There are basically three types of firearms that are governed by the federal government and by firearms laws on a federal and state level. And they are pistols or pistols revolvers and rifles and shotguns, or you could say handguns and long guns. Let's start with a long gun, a rifle or a shotgun. In the United States of America generally, who can lawfully own a rifle or a shotgun?
Sure. Well, as far as long guns are concerned, the first requirement you have, or at least for purchasing from a gun store or an FFL, which is a federal firearms licensee, you have an age requirement. And on long guns, the age requirement is 18 years or older for a long gun. And oftentimes you get people who, will kind of question that as to, well, is the pistol, we can get into that later, but is a pistol worse off as far as firepower than, for example, an AR-15? Because an AR-15 is considered to be a long gun. So if you're 18 years of age or older, you can purchase from a FFL or a gun store, you can purchase long guns. So they have the age requirement.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you right there because immediately a lot of folks are saying, well, wait a minute. I gave my kid a shotgun. My kid goes hunting with me. He's 12 years old. He's 14. He's 16. Is there a difference between lawfully owning a firearm and possessing a firearm?
Correct, and there is a major difference, and thanks for pointing that out. To purchase one, you have to be 18 years of older. To own or possess, you can be younger than 18. Generally, it's 16, as well as the same thing for pistols. If it is for pistols, for example, it has to be that if you're 16 years or under the age of 18, you have to have parental consent or your guardian consent, and they also have some additional restrictions as to if it is required for duty, meaning your job. If you are a security or if you are a farmer, and that's as part of your job description, you have to have it, then yes, you are allowed to, even under the age of 18.
All right, so if you had two 16-year-olds hunting with .22 caliber rifles, let's say squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, or a shotgun, and we would call them a game warden or a wildlife officer comes upon them, are they in trouble or are they not in trouble, provided they've got the right hunting licenses?
As long as they have the right hunting license and their guardian is there, then yes, they're fine.
But if the guardian is not there, there's a problem?
There generally tends to be a problem just because, again, of the age. I've got to look into even further to see, but it's over the age of 18, you're fine. Under the age of 18, over the age of 16, as long as you are in, I know that there's discussion and part of the laws is that as long as you are in a shooting activity, meaning hunting as well as shooting activities, so like, tactical classes, that kind of stuff as well, that's
right,
okay.
Right. Okay, so probably for a rule of thumb, to lawfully purchase, 18, to lawfully possess, generally with not a lot of problems, 16, anything under that, you definitely need to have a guardian present.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, what about on handguns?
On a handgun, the age restriction is for purchasing from an FFL gun store. It is 21 years of age or older to purchase. Anyone over the age of 18 can possess a handgun, and privately, meaning a private individual selling or gifting, because parents can also purchase as a gift for their children, can purchase a firearm privately. That age goes from 21 to 18. And again, it has the same restrictions as to if under the age of 18, as long as the purpose of the firearm is used for duty or for job descriptions, then it is limited to that job description as well.
All right, now let's say I had a daughter who is 18, which I don't have, but let's say I did have. If I were to purchase her a firearm, if I were to bring her into your gun store and say, Mr. Caporale, I want to get my daughter here who's traveling back and forth to college or is has a night job as a waitress or whatever, I want to purchase a firearm for her and give it to her. That's okay? That's not considered a straw purchase?
No, it's not considered a straw purchase, and that, in a sense, is a gift. So that's okay. A straw purchase basically has one key component, and that key component is that you are purchasing with the known and intent that the person you're purchasing it for cannot legally pass the background check.
Okay.
So in that sense, it's, I'm going to buy my buddy a gun because he failed it over at this gun store, so I'm going to go ahead and take it. That would be a straw purchase.
All right. Would it make any difference, and I know we're getting into state laws, which you might not have all the information on, but let's say that my daughter is currently going to college. I'm in Florida, and she's going to Auburn or University of Alabama, and I purchase a firearm for her and give it to her. Is she then, because she's in another state, is that a problem?
It could be another problem. The way the jurisdiction works is when you're in Florida, you're under Florida's jurisdiction. When you end up going to the other state, you're under their jurisdiction. What we often tell everybody is, even in the case, for example, let's say you have a firearm in the house, you have children under the age of 21 who legally can't purchase it, but they are legally allowed to possess it. So first and foremost, in the safe, you should have a note signed by the guardian or parent allowing the child under age of 21, especially under the age of 18, to use or possess it in instances of, for example, self-defense, that kind of stuff. Okay. What that does is that says right there, hey, I've given them authorization for this specific reasoning. So if you're not there and somebody tries to break in the house, you obviously have something that says, well, my guardian allows me to use it for that purpose.
18-year-old young man, 18-year-old young woman, 19 years old, even 20 years old. The hypothetical here, attempted carjacking, and they have a pistol or revolver in the vehicle, which is drawn to protect themselves and stop the carjacking. Because they're not 21, is there going to be a problem? Are they going to be in trouble?
No, I mean, it won't be an issue using the firearm.
Okay.
Because again, over the age of 18, under the age of 21, they can possess it. We can talk about buying ammunition, which creates a caveat in itself.
Right.
But in that instance, no, using the firearm is fine.
All right. So to purchase lawfully, 18 for a rifle or a shotgun. To purchase lawfully, 21 for a pistol. To possess lawfully, 16 for a long gun, 18 for a handgun.
Correct. And the interesting caveat of the handgun, and what we inform individuals that, let's say, are purchasing it for their son or daughter who's over 18 but under 21, they can't legally purchase handgun ammunition from gun stores unless you're 21 or over. So here they have a handgun, but they can't purchase handgun ammunition from Walmart, from any gun store. They can privately, and they can be given ammunition by a parent or guardian, but they cannot purchase it. So kind of you run into an issue because here I have a handgun, but if I needed to buy ammunition for it, I can't just go to any gun store because I'm under the age of 21.
All right, how is the ammunition determined? And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. There are probably more .22 caliber rifles than there are .22 caliber pistols. There are lever action .357 rifles, .44 rifles, etc. Is the situation is if a caliber can be used in a handgun, it's considered handgun?
No, not necessarily, and that's actually a really good point. That determination as to whether or not the individual under the age of 21, for age restriction purposes, if they come in to purchase, let's say, what would typically be a handgun ammunition, but it is for a long gun, what happens is it's up to the store owner to determine whether or not, in fact, that is being used purposefully in a handgun or a long gun. And we often get that, for example, like you said, .357 Magnum, .38 Special, which has typically been used for handguns, can be used in lever action rifles. The same thing, for example, with modern handgun or modern long guns. Some of them will shoot pistol-sized calibers.
Sure.
And so when an individual over the age of 18, under the age of 21, is going to purchase these for their long gun, they need to inform the store owner or the clerk that's there that they want to purchase, for example, 45 ACP ammunition for my whatever long gun it is. Rather than just saying, yeah, I need to buy 45 ACP. Because if the store owner or the clerk has any reason to believe that it is not being used for a long gun and they're under the age of 21, then they can decide not to sell the ammunition. And, of course, customers will get upset over that because to them they have the gun, but because they omitted or were not able to, give the information as to the point that they were with authority, like, yes, that is what I'm using it for, then we have to make the determination because it is our federal license that's involved.
All right. I appreciate all these doors that you're opening for me. One quick question before we pause here. Someone comes in and they say, I need .223 or 5.56, and automatically it's assumed probably a Mini 14, an AR-15, any one of a number of rifles, but maybe they have an AR-15 pistol, or maybe they have something like a Thompson Contender or some single-shot .223. Is there a prerequisite that the person tell you if it is a pistol?
It's not necessarily a prerequisite, but the store owner or the clerk should be aware of that and actually inquire as to what it was for. Is it for a long gun or a handgun? And then that will start a dialogue to make sure that it is, in fact, for a long gun. Okay.
All right. We're going to pause for a couple of minutes, folks. Be sure to have paper and pen handy. When we come back, Marco, I'd like for you to tell us about this family that needs assistance in your area there. When we continue, straight talk from ARN.
Life is full of choices. We make good choices and sometimes bad choices. Well, you can smile and rest easy for a bit because you've made a good choice. Because you're listening to Accent Radio Network. And no, I'm not being arrogant. It's because I've been here for several years, and our main goal or directive is to bring you truth and awareness through our programming. You see, as a form of media, we have a responsibility to deliver information as accurately and truthfully as we can. Now, are all mediums like that? Unfortunately not. There are those who choose monetary gain or better or stronger political positioning than upfront honesty. And that's a real shame because with that mindset, that selfish ambition, no one truly wins, at least not in the long run. So we here at the network want to thank you for listening. We're honored and will go to great lengths to continue bringing you programming that you can truly believe in. Thank you for making that choice. Thank you for listening to Accent Radio Network. Do you want to listen to Daniel Chapter 1 Health Watch anywhere, both hours? Maybe your radio station only airs the first or just the second hour. Well, now it's possible to hear both. And if you're away from your computer and can't hear our internet streams, no problemo, because of Audio Now. You can call our free dial-in listen lines at 386-524-0333 from any phone, landline, or cell and hear Daniel Chapter 1 Health Watch. There's no charge for the service, so listen as often and long as you'd like. With unlimited long distance on landlines and unlimited voice plans for cells, here's one great way to listen to Daniel Chapter 1 Health Watch, both hours. No software installation or modifications thanks to Audio Now. Just dial 386-524-0333 and listen to Daniel Chapter 1 Health Watch. That's 386-524-0333.
Welcome back to the Second Amendment Hour of Straight Talk from Accent Radio Network and our co-host Marco Caporale of Family Firearms in Valrico, Florida, familyfirearms.net. You had a customer, I believe, Marco, and they've lost their house in a home fire?
Yes, and thank you very much for allowing us to get the word out. We actually have a good customer of ours who's actually a young guy under the age of 30, and a family member of his late last night actually had a house fire, lost everything, completely burned house, doesn't have anything at all. They have 3 small children. They have, I believe it's 2 boys and a girl. And one of the things when they, and we're very big on Facebook, it's just an easy way to get a lot of immediate information out. And we're always trying to help the community. And when we got word of this, we went out today and let everybody know that to help with this family, they had given us basically sizes of clothes and things like that for the children. We wanted to focus on the children because as adults we can cope with things, but children don't often, they don't have the opportunity to really understand what's going on.
Sure.
So however we can to make it best for them, that's what we wanted to do. So we went out today and made an announcement that we are going to offer a voucher for a free concealed weapons permit class for certain things that this family needs. And we've pretty much narrowed it to the basics of what they needed, and there's essentially 3 things that they really need. One of them was children's outfits, and we have basic sizes that they need. So, for example, for every 3 complete children outfits, that's a top and a bottom, we're going to give a free CWP class, and that can be taken anywhere all the way to the end of this year. The girls' sizes are 4T for tops and 5T for bottoms. Their shoe size is size 8. Now for the boys, we have the size for the tops are 2T and the same for the bottoms, 2T. Their shoe size is 6. The other thing that we need because they have a small child is size 6 diapers. We figured out of these 3 items, if, for example, someone can bring in 2 packages of baby wipes and 2 packages of size 6 diapers, that's sufficient for getting a free CWP class. If you bring in 3 complete children outfits, then we'll give a free CWP class as well. Now, what some people have been doing, and we really appreciate it, we look at it as if you have stuff you were going to give away anyway, do that. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy them the clothes to bring them in.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have it, that's wonderful. We'll take anything. If you do feel the need that, look, I don't have that, but I would like to go buy some, feel free to do that. Other people have been bringing in gift cards to, like, Publix, Walmart, things like that.
Pretty good idea.
Yeah, and that way the family, based on what they need, they can go and do that. We rather do that than bringing individual food because we don't know what they need. Plus, also, too, we'd like to help with storage, but we don't have a lot of storage as it stands right now. But at least then by giving them the cards, it can only be spent there, obviously, and that it will help them. We're trying to do everything that we can. We're donating as much as we can. We're donating cash as well as taking in all of the items. Some people are bringing in cribs, beds, whatever they can give that they can just give away. We'll definitely be able to take it, and then we'll actually forward it on to the family.
All right, now, can the folks, our listeners who want to help, and hopefully we all will, and we all can, I'm sure, to some degree or another, do we go to your website? Do we go to your Facebook? How do we do this?
Actually, the best bet right now is to go to our Facebook, and that is facebook.com/Family Firearms. There you'll see it's one of the biggest articles that we have on there. A lot of people have responded. We answer as soon as we get responses from it. If people have questions, feel free to give us a call, to find out how long we're going to be here, what else is needed. Our phone number is 813-689-2000. And, of course, we'll be more than happy to give our address. If anybody does a Google search, you'll have our address, which is 106 South St. Cloud Avenue. That is in Valrico, Florida, and the zip code is 33594. We're probably going to at least do this for the next week. We want to try to get as much as possible so that there is as little downtime for this family.
All right. For folks who don't know, in the Central Florida area or in the North Florida, folks are listeners over in the Apopka and Orlando areas and such, Valrico is just outside the Brandon, Tampa Bay area, kind of a neighboring community and such, so it's right in the Tampa Bay area there. And as I say, on Facebook, just check out Family Firearms. May I ask, no injuries? Everybody was okay? They got out of the fire okay?
Yeah, no injuries. Everybody was out. I'm actually getting more details throughout the day as to what happened because we do want to let everybody know and be informed as to what happened. But thank God, no injuries. The children are okay. All the family members are okay. And they do have a good support system, so that's already started. And so we just want to do whatever we can to help with all the essentials for the everyday life.
All right. For those who might have come in on this halfway through, we'll mention this again before the end of the program and make sure that these folks get this. Marco, this is what I appreciate about Family Firearms. The name says the whole thing. But this is what America used to do. This was the way America was, neighbor helping neighbor, friend helping friend, community helping people within the community. And we got to where we rely on the government too darn much to take care of us. It ought to be this way. It ought to be the families and the friends and the neighbors and the church families and so on that count it on. And I applaud you and the folks at Family Firearms for your efforts in these areas. Thank you very, very much, sir.
No problem. Thank you for giving us the outlet and the opportunity to let everybody know.
All right, we're going to pause again for a couple of minutes here. When we come back, we're going to pick up on our general discussion of some of the misunderstandings or myths regarding firearms ownership, who can, who can't, that kind of thing. When we continue, second of an hour of Straight Talk on ARN. Welcome back to the Second Amendment Hour of Straight Talk on the Accent Radio Network. I'm Jerry Hughes, and our host, Mr. Marco Caporale of Family Firearms, FamilyFirearms.net, and Family Firearms on Facebook, Facebook.com/FamilyFirearms. Marco, I want to pick up where we left off in the first segment regarding ownership and lawful purchase and so on. A couple of other areas that I'd like to get into, and I think we also had a question from one of our listeners I want to get to in a moment as well. But we talked about 21 basically to lawfully purchase a handgun, 18 to lawfully purchase a long gun. A couple of questions. 21 or 18 for someone who is unlawfully in the United States? Can an illegal immigrant purchase a handgun?
Okay. So an illegal immigrant cannot purchase. You can be here on visa. You can have a green card and be able to. Oftentimes they ask, for example, the easiest way to do that is if you have a hunting license. If you don't, it does take a little bit additional time when doing the background check because not only do they have to do the domestic FBI, but then they also have to do INS.
Okay.
So, yeah, as far as non-immigrant aliens, it depends on the exact situation. And ATF's got a long list of almost like a matrix. Well, if the answer is yes to this, follow this line, and these are the steps you need to do. The one thing we do tell everybody is if you don't live in Florida, for example, or you don't live in the United States, you're not a citizen or anything like that, the other thing that is required is you have to show 90 days of residency in the U.S. previous to when you want to buy the gun. So it has to be 90 days continuous. You have to show electricity bills, rental agreements, that kind of stuff, to show that you've been here 90 days exactly prior to when you're purchasing the gun.
All right. How about someone who is under indictment or has been accused and charged with a crime but has not yet been convicted or found guilty of a crime?
If you're not, as far as that, and that's actually on the 4473. Basically, if you're under indictment in any court for a felony, then you can't. Or if, for example, the judge can imprison you for more than 1 year. for any other crime. If you are under indictment for any of those issues, then no, you can't purchase. And then you can't do anything essentially until it's been determined, one, that, okay, it's either been you're not being indicted for the felony, or they've dropped the charges, or it's been lowered to a misdemeanor, and then you start getting into, for example, well, what misdemeanors are they,
right,
to whether or not you can purchase as well. But if you're under indictment for any felony crime, as well as if you could face an imprisonment for more than a year, then no, you cannot.
All right, and some other these I guess some could call it nitpicking or technical issues. What about someone who is perhaps known in the community to be an alcoholic or a drug abuser? I know there's a question on the 4473 form, but if the person, say, is not unknown, I mean, if they are, but it's not generally known that they are, do you have to actually ask a person, are you a drug user, are you an alcoholic?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. For example, we can inquire as much as we want, and we respect everybody else as far as, personal information and things like that. We are talking about purchasing firearms, so there's a little bit of leeway. What we can't do, for example, is when they're filling out the paperwork, which is called the 4473, that's actually the number of the form.
Mm-hmm.
When they're filling that out, we cannot assist them in filling that out. One thing we can do, though, is add our own, as far as, I wouldn't call it intuition, but things that we are seeing as well, and that is, individual comes in, they answer the form, and on the form they claim, they put that no, that they're not an habitual user of drugs or alcohol, yet we can smell alcohol. Then we can make the decision to not allow the purchase. And we have that right. Again, it is our federal license. We can face federal prison time if we know information that is either false, that's being reported on the phone or on the form, or that we don't know that it's false, but we have contradictory evidence. And in that case, we would not allow them to purchase. So they're given leeway to fill the form out as truthfully as possible. But if they are known, if we have any indication whatsoever, and we've had that in the past where an individual provides a little bit of information that they shouldn't have provided, and where therefore it would have been an approval, and we would have sold the firearm, because of that additional information, we have withdrawn that and decided that we weren't going to do that.
All right. Now this gets into another area as well here. One of the things that I've always thought kind of interesting, because of the crazy society that we live in that is frequently run by lawyers, and some of whom don't have the greatest mindset in the world. I don't recall on a Form 4473 or anywhere on that form a question that would deal with liability, and as I say, especially in the litigious society that we are in, the question along the line of, do you have any intention of using this firearm in an unlawful manner? Today when you have bartenders who can be sued and nightclubs that can be sued for giving too much alcohol or that kind of thing, selling a car to a person who's a known offender of laws of traffic, let's say, or whatever. I'm amazed that someone hasn't included a question like that on the form to protect gun dealers.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about that is we have gone a little bit further on the form here, for example, and I don't necessarily need to digress, but for our gun range, we've taken the extra step, for example, to ask the same questions that are on the 4473 in when you either purchase a membership for a gun range or you're going to shoot. And the reason for that is you're not buying a gun, and if a person has a felony, they're not allowed to possess guns either.
Right.
But in gun ranges, most of them do not have any type of form for you to fill out that states that question. So here you have, whereas a felon cannot, for example, purchase a gun, they can go into a gun range, and without notifying them that they're a felon, we don't do a background check, so we don't know that right off of the bat. They can rent a gun, and if, God forbid, something happens, then they have the opportunity to do that. But we've taken it a step further and asking the same questions so that it's just as the example you have given. If, for example, they do have a firearm, something happens, again, God forbid, but then a law enforcement asks us, well, did you determine whether or not they were a felon? At least we have the additional step to say, look, we require them to fill a form. They answered no. and it's the same information that's on the 4473. We took that as their value, that, yes, they're not, so they wouldn't be a prohibited person.
You hate to get into that kind of stuff. You hate to push the envelope, but as I say, in the society in which we live today, a lot of folks are just looking for an opportunity to stick somebody.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to pause in just a moment. We did get a question from Central Florida relayed through Andrew, our producer today, and that question is for someone who could purchase a handgun at 21, they have it at 18, can they get a permit to carry? Can they get a CCW license at 18?
Well, they weren't before, but I know that we had talked in a couple shows back at one of the bills that were passing through the House and the Senate in Florida to allow under the age of 21, if you were in the armed services or currently in the armed services, you could. But as it stands right now, under the age of 21, and you cannot.
Okay. Also, just before our break, and then please correct me if I'm wrong, any of the folks that we have talked about, generally with the exception perhaps of illegal immigrants, who would be denied a firearm, they do have the right to appeal to the Attorney General of the state, I believe, and if they probably ought to get a lawyer to help them do that, but they might get an exemption that indeed would allow them to get a firearm.
Absolutely, and we can talk about that after the break.
All right, let's do that. We're going to pause for 2 minutes, and we're on the Second Amendment hour of Straight Talk from ARN.
Imagine that you're listening to a broadcast on radio or computer and you're bombarded with profane language. Or while flipping through your television channels, the subject matter content turned your stomach. Or when reading a newspaper or magazine, you saw the worst examples of pandemonium. One only needs to look through history to know that communication, although powerful, can equally serve good as it does evil. But without media, in all of its forms transferring information, our lives would be vastly different. Accent Radio Network has a responsibility, and with a fairly conservative outlook on issues, we strive in our own way to make things right. Our talk show hosts reflect that, as they're not prone to shooting off at the mouth, or try subtle yet persuasive psychobabble to implement some personal hidden agenda. They choose their sources carefully. If we in any way influence our listeners, it would be our sincere hope that it would be, in the end, for the good. And we trust that our listeners can recognize the difference between gratuitous ranting and educating.
Listening to the radio, driving in your car. Radio gets results.
Over the course of a week, radio reaches more than 228 million people. That's 94% of all people aged 12 and older. And radio doesn't take the weekend off. More than 182 million people, or 75% of Americans over 12, tune into radio on Saturday and Sunday. How do you take advantage of that? Advertise. Support your local radio station and promote your product or service at the same time. To advertise nationally, call Accent Radio Network at 866-222-2368. Toll free, 866-2-ACCENT.
Welcome back to the Second Amendment hour of Straight Talk. From the Accent Radio Network, Mr. Marco Caporale of Family Firearms, familyfirearms.net on the Internet, Family Firearms on Facebook, facebook.com/familyfirearms. And we again want to get the information, Marco, before the end of the program on this young family that is in need of assistance after being burned out of their home last evening. We were talking about people who perhaps cannot purchase a firearm. There is an appeals process for some of these folks where I believe they apply to the Attorney General for an exemption. Is that correct?
Actually, if that in fact happens, what they end up doing, and we let everybody know who, for whatever reason, receives what's called a non-approval. And for those that don't know, there's basically when we call it in, you get an approval, a conditional non-approval, because they never give a conditional approval, but a conditional non-approval and a flat-out non-approval. If they receive a non-approval, you have the ability to appeal it, and you have up to, I think it's 30 days to appeal it. And you actually appeal it in Florida, to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Okay.
It goes there first. And the reason that it does that is FDLE, when we do our background checks, we call into the FDLE system, and they actually in turn have a connection with the FBI database. We use FDLE as an interim, and if I can go into why we use that, but the reason we go through there is there's an extra step that FDLE looks at. And they have a certain amount of time in order to make a determination as to whether or not everything is satisfied, the individual is, that individual they're looking at on the screen. If they can't do that within a matter of a few minutes, and I think it's between 3 and 5 minutes, then they issue what's called a conditional non-approval. And that just means that, look, we're looking through the information. There's some information of other individuals that's similar. And since we can't make a determination in that 3 to 5 minute time period, we have up to an additional 3 days in order to determine whether or not you're allowed to have the firearm. So the store will keep it for those 3 days. If you receive a non-approval, generally that doesn't always mean that the person can't have a firearm. Sometimes, again, it's human errors. Sometimes the human on the other side sees the information, and because maybe a Social Security number is omitted, maybe there's a number that they had switched, and they see a different individual who would not be able to purchase, they issue a non-approval. When that happens, you have 30 days in order to appeal to the FDLE, and we actually have the paperwork. Part of it form we fill out, the other part the individual fills out. Once you send it in, you wait 21 days, and then you actually can inquire. There's an 877 number, an 800 number, that you would inquire, because they don't tell us the information as to why it was non-approved or conditional. They just tell us either non-approval or conditional. Once that 21 days is up, and when the individual contacts them, they'll give them all the information. Sometimes court systems don't mesh with the FBI system. Maybe they had a battery charge from 15 years ago, and even though it was dropped, they still have old papers into the system. And so what you have to do is just supply FDLE with copies of those items, and then they get it taken care of.
All right, now let me make sure that I understand this. Let's say that I were to come into your shop and I were to purchase a firearm. And to my knowledge, I have no problems whatsoever, but for some reason it comes back that I've not been approved, that my name's been, whatever, it's flagged there. At that point, do I have the right to say, look, this is incorrect, there's got to be human error here, can we run this again? Or is there a legal process or a standard process then that has to be followed that can take up to 2 weeks, 21 days, 30 days, or whatever?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you have the right. You can have us inquire again. We can go back in and redo it. Sometimes it works, and oftentimes it doesn't, only because it's already been in the system once, so it gets flagged.
Right.
But there's been instances where an individual gets a non-approval from, let's say, our store. They go down to the road to the next store. They run the system, and it gets approved. And again, a lot of times it's, it could be human error. But in that case, we can rerun it. And if it comes back approved, there's no issue. If it still comes back as non-approval, then the individual has the option to go through the appeal process. At that point, we can't release any firearms or anything like that.
Right. Is there a danger that a person could be, for lack of better terminology here, Marco, put on a list? I mean, a person who really doesn't have a problem, that they could be flagged, and that because of that you're looking at a kind of a Pandora's box kind of thing, that it might take months or years to get off the list?
There's no list that I know of. And what we see sometimes is if it's common names, last names like, for example, Fernandez, Garcia, Smith, things like that, that generally runs. There's so many. If you omit a social, we've had instances where, for example, an individual had a name, they were a junior, and their father actually was a convicted felon. They didn't put junior on the form. So
the more information you have, the more specific, the better.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right. Now, what I'd like to do now before the end of our program, and still give us time again to get back to this family that's needing our help here, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what types of firearms that people can and cannot own. Is there a limitation on the number of rounds that a magazine or a tube or anything like that can carry? In other words, if there was a firearm that was built that could hold 500 rounds, does that automatically make it illegal because an American citizen can own a firearm that would hold 500 rounds?
For the most part, no. There used to be the assault weapons ban, and Clinton had that when he was in administration.
Right.
That was lifted. It was a 10-year horizon. Was lifted. Was never repealed to go back in. And so it used to be that if you had a magazine that had more than 10 rounds, that was covered under the assault weapons ban, and therefore an average citizen, if you weren't law enforcement or military, couldn't possess it.
There still is in areas like California and such.
Correct. And that's been lifted as a federal rule. Now, individual states could also decide to keep that. For example, like you had mentioned, California does. Massachusetts also has it. In the state of Florida, as it pertains, there is no limit to the capacity of the magazine.
Okay.
And there is discussion that who knows what happens, but that might come back again.
Good point. All right. Yes or no if you can. I hear this all the time. It is illegal to own, to possess, to have a short-barreled shotgun. Yes or no?
No, it's not illegal to possess or own, provided you have the correct paperwork. And the basic difference,
but there's additional paperwork involved.
Yes, there's additional paperwork, and of course the government has to get their money. So, for example, if you're going to purchase a shotgun or a rifle, for a shotgun under 18 inches or a rifle under 16 inches, you are allowed to legally in the state of Florida own that. You just have to. It's considered an NFA, National Firearms Act weapon, or a Class 3, or even it's referred to as a Title 2. You have to fill out a special paperwork by ATF called a Form 4. You pay a $200 or $5 tax stamp to the federal government, and right now your approximate wait for approval is between 6 and 9 months. You go through that entire process, and you can own it.
I hear people say it is absolutely illegal. An American citizen cannot own a machine gun. Yes or no?
No, that's not true. It is perfectly legal, and again, every state is different, but in the state of Florida, you are allowed to. It falls under the same Class 3 items we had talked about, as long as, for example, 1986, the assault weapons ban was done. If the firearm, the host weapon, was made prior to 1986, it is considered to be a legal host weapon, and a citizen can have that. If the firearm or host weapon was made after 1986, then it is only allowed by law enforcement or military. You follow the same paperwork, the NFA, you pay the $200 stamp, and you can own it as well.
Are we talking the host weapon or the host model?
The host weapon, as well as the controlled item, for example, for a fully automatic weapon, the auto sear, the part that actually makes it full auto.
Okay.
Those also have to have paperwork with. But the host weapon can have it. Just because you have a weapon that was made prior to 86, that's not what makes it an NFA weapon. The fact that it has a full auto sear or a sear pack, that is the controlled item. That has to be made prior to 86, and that is what you pay $200 document stamp on.
It is illegal in the United States for an American citizen to make a firearm.
No, that's false, too. You are allowed to make a firearm. We talked about in the Class 3, if, for example, the short barrel items, you're going to fill out a Form 4. There is a Form 1, which is to make and or register a firearm. You can make a firearm. You can make silencers. As long as you fill out your Form 1, you pay for the tax stamp, it comes back approved, then you can go ahead and make that item. There are requirements as to stampings of serial numbers, etc., and you just have to follow those rules, which is very easy to follow. They give it to you. It's not difficult. It's just time-consuming.
What is the largest caliber of firearm, centerfire or other, in handgun, rifle, shotgun, that an American citizen can own?
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting question. I don't believe that there's any restrictions unless you...
Let's do it in the sense of a non-special weapon where you have to fill out extra paperwork. For instance, what's the largest caliber that you could sell to the average American consumer?
Sure, I can do a 50 BMG. You want to own a 50 BMG rifle? Absolutely. You want to pay the $10,000, $12,000? That's not an issue at all.
All right. How about a 10-gauge shotgun, 8-gauge shotgun?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, very good. All right. We've got about 3 minutes remaining. Let's, this family that lost their home to home fire last night. They have 3 children. They need help. And as I said earlier, this is what America used to do. We reached out in our community. We tried to help our fellow Americans. We tried to help our neighbors and friends and such. Tell us about this family, what you're doing for them at Family Firearms.
Sure. We are offering a voucher for a free concealed weapons permit class for any of the 3 items that they need. For example, if you bring in 3 complete children outfits, which consists of a top and a bottom, if you bring 3 complete outfits, girl sizes that are needed for tops are 4T. For bottoms, they are 5T. For shoes, it's size 8. For the boys, it is 2T, size for the top, 2T for the bottom, and their shoe size is 6. If you bring 3 complete outfits, for every 3 complete outfits, free concealed permit class, or if you bring in 2 packages of baby wipes and 2 packages of size 6 diapers, that's also allowed for a voucher for a CWP class. If you don't have those items and you just want to donate, gift cards to any of the food stores, Walmart, Target, anything like that, the family would absolutely love it, as well as if you want to, you have some old toys, things that you can give so that the kids are distracted for as much as they can. That's great. If you go on to Facebook and find Family Firearms, facebook.com/Family Firearms, the information is there. We're constantly answering everybody's questions. You can also give us a call at 813-689-2000. We will do everything and anything we can. Even for those in Central Florida, I have family. I don't have a problem going down there every couple of days with a central location, gathering up all the stuff and bringing it. So any help that anybody can give, we greatly appreciate it.
Fantastic. And while we're talking about these things, you're in your new location now in Valrico, Florida. Your range is probably, a couple of 3 weeks away from being open?
We're about 2.5 weeks away. They're actually laying the block and putting in the glass tomorrow.
Fantastic. Right. Well, give folks, for those who are your previous customers and would like to have come seen you in the Brandon area, give them your new location.
Sure. We are located now at 106 South St. Cloud Avenue, and that is Valrico, Florida, 33594. We're on the corner of State Road 60 and St. Cloud Avenue on the south side.
Right. And something we touched on very quickly here before the end of the program a couple of times. The mayor of Tampa had submitted to Governor Scott, Rick Scott of Florida, wanted to try to keep all guns away from the Republican convention. Florida has the preemptive law that lets the state dictate gun control rather than the cities. Apparently the governor has rejected that and said no, he will not interfere in that area. What do you think?
I'm glad that he decided to make that. I mean, the Secret Service is going to be inside of the building. They've got everything on the perimeter. And to go into the clean zone, which is 5 miles and 5 square miles outside of the building, is ridiculous. So I'm glad he made that decision.
Fantastic. Marco Caporale, sir, God bless you for your efforts to help this family here, and I hope our listeners will respond appropriately. FamilyFirearms.net on Facebook, Facebook.com/Family Firearms. God willing, we'll do it again next week, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Jerry, for this outlet.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Affiliates, thank you. Guys and gals operating the affiliates, thank you. And those listening in by way of the the World Wide Web, thank you. I'm Jerry Hughes for Straight Talk from the Accent Radio Network. God save the Republic of the United States of America.
This program has been brought to you by Accent Radio Network. Copyright 2012. To order a copy of the show, go online to accentradionetwork.com. Radionetwork.com. 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 Radionetwork.com.